if I'm timing this video correctly, season 3 of Invincible should have just wrapped up not too long ago. And man, what a season. And honestly, speaking as someone who's not familiar with the story from the comics, what a show. Even with the whole deconstructionist approach on the superhero genre, there's still that undeniable familiar charm found in elements such as alien empires, magic, multiverse, cyborgs, kaijus, time travel and whatnot. The comic book was clearly meant to be a love letter to superhero comics, a 15 years long one in fact, as much as the animated series now serves as a refreshing take now that the hype for DC or Marvel kinda dried out. Speaking of, let's be honest, there's no such thing as a fully original story. You're always gonna find pre-existing archetypes, story structures, themes and so on and so forth, just combined in different ways. Marvel and DC themselves have been ripping each other off since the dawn of time. Therefore, the independent Invincible is clearly not gonna be any different, as expected. But are most Invincible characters mostly Marvel inspired, mostly DC inspired, bit of both, or inspired by other companies entirely? That's what we're gonna find out today. So like, comment and subscribe for more ranking videos because I haven't done one in ages and I wouldn't mind doing more. Omni Man is often paired with Homelander when it comes to who does the whole evil Superman archetype better, but as most of you realize by now that you're watching the show, besides being an alien superhero with a red cape that ends up marrying a human woman, that's kinda where the Supermanisms stop. Going from west to the east, however, let's look at another famous race of alien warriors, DragonBall Saiyans. Being the member of a proud alien race hell-bent on war and conquest, before rebelling, who later gets his cold heart unfrozen by a human woman as they father one of Earth's greatest heroes, Nolan honestly reminds me of a fusion dance between Bardock and Vegeta more than anything, so he will be the first one to go into other companies. His son, Marky Moo, Mark Grayson, Invincible, if he's invisible why can I see it, being the half-human half-alien of a famous caped hero and a normal woman, parallels to Superboy, specifically Jonathan Kent, come to mind. However, the high school setting, hot-headed streak, troubled balance between the personal life and the superhero life definitely reminds many of Spider-Man. I wanna say that the Peter Parker-isms of Mark's character take up a roughly equal portion of his Jonathan Kent-isms, and with his blue suit being confirmed to be inspired by Spidey's black suit tone-wise, plus sharing a name with another black and blue Grayson, aka Nightwing Batman's successor, I think there's enough balance between the Marvel and DC side of things for him to fall into the bit of both. Now, given everything I said so far, you might think I'm gonna parallel Debbie to Bulma or Lois Lane, respectively. But to tell you the truth, I don't think she fits either mold. I personally think she's up there for one of the mentally strongest characters in the Invincible universe because the sheer amount of stuff she goes through while still somehow remaining a mentally sane and good-hearted woman and mother is literally out of this world. Props to Debbie. That said though, she isn't as rich nor inventive as Bulma, nor does she run head first into danger as part of her job like Lois. Understandably enough, she's traumatized as it is. But she's not harmless like Aunt May either. I personally think she's a very well balanced and grounded character that shines on her own light, so mostly original. Unfortunately, Grayson family is gonna stay separated, because up next we have Oliver, and like, between the hairstyle, the mask, the red in his costume, the lack of hesitation when it comes to killing foes, mostly due to the more villainous side of his genetics, which the other heroic half tries to temper, to me that's straight up Damian Wayne. Granted, he obviously grows into an actually tolerable person much more quickly, and I am not familiar with his comic book self, but for now that's the closest parallel I can think of. They even both have a big brother Grayson in blue and black to butt heads with. Remember when the Black Force Omni Man videos were everywhere a few years ago and everyone was calling the Guardians of the Globe quote the knockoff Justice League? To be fully honest, yeah, not much of a counter argument against that. There is some nuance for some members however, but before we get to those, let's get to the obvious parallels. Aquarius, Atlantis fella, control over water, fish themed, name that contains the Latin and Italian word for water, that's Aquaman. I do like the funny contrast between him being a goofy fish guy whereas everyone is done in a much more realistic art style though. Martian Man. Come on, they didn't even try with this one. Yeah, Martian Manhunter. Red Rush. A speedster who is red. No lighting motifs or time-space shenanigans, and him being Russian is unique, but no, you're Flash dude, sorry, до свидания. War Woman, or as I seen many call her, Walmart Woman. Anyway, yeah, the WW name, the Greek-inspired outfit are both a dead ringer. But Hermes does bring Hawkgirl into the mix too, who's also DC Comics anyway, so moot point. Darkwing the First. He's Batman in pretty much everything except thinking ahead for any contingency plans against the local Superman standing. We instead decided to make him think ahead in another way entirely, that being against the floor. The Immortal, the internet and Invincible's favorite punching bag, is an interesting case. Instead of being a nefarious take on a heroic character, Immortal is an heroic version of a villain, specifically DC's Vandal Savage. A caveman whom, after being exposed by weird energy meteor thingy, becomes an immortal who literally marked history, posing as various historical figures. She is immortal in a nutshell. The only difference is that Savage spent his immortality pillaging and conquering instead of actively helping people, and some versions are more chill than others. With a name like Vandal Savage you expect some kind of brutish caveman. It's actually more like a James Bond villain most of the time. Despite the criminally low screen time, the Green Ghost is an interesting case. On one end, she has a green in her superhero alias, carries green jewelry of cosmic origin for her powers, like Green Lantern. Instead of making constructs, she weaponizes intangibility like the X-Men Kitty Pryde. So all in all, I say she can actually join Mark in the bit of both category, especially with a very unique design that doesn't resemble any established hero before or after, which dilutes the water quite a lot. Not too far ahead, we have Darkwing the Second. The former, quote, Robin figure to Darkwing the First, who carries a much more, let's say, open-minded view when it comes to killing criminals, sorta like Jason Todd or Azrael, which are both Batman's successors who are open to killing. His ethnicity and shadowy powers, however, highly reminded me of Cloak, from Marvel's Cloak and Dagger, and since such power set is a big part of his character, practically as much as his outfit is a Batman-y visually, I'll personally think he can also join the Bit of Both club, which is finally gaining some members. Now, that said though, where are you? There you are. Shapesmith is literally just Plastic Man. The hairstyle, the vibes of his outfit, the personality, the comic relief, shape-shifting powers, wanting to atone for past mistakes, that's Plastic Man to a T. Hell, I think the voice actor even confirmed he always wanted to voice Plastic Man. So this is basically a perfect role for him. Monster Girl is another very interesting case. At first you may look at this human that can turn to a big strong green monster as an incredibly obvious nod to the Jolly Green Giant. However, since she can transform at command, the source of such powers and magical curse instead of scientific shenanigans, and the tragedy falls more on the fact that she gets younger every time she de-transforms instead of any split personality born out of childhood trauma, I personally think she's actually so unique that she can count as more of an original character than a derivative one. Duplicate, besides having a clever name, doesn't really bring much to the table. Like, she's a girl, part of a superhero team and can multiply herself. Triplicate girl from Legion of Superheroes. DC. Shrinking Ware, or as I like to call her, Shrinking Bear, can shrink. Probably because she discovered Ware particles while studying white dwarf stars or something. Jokes aside, shrinking is a power you can easily find both in Marvel or DC. She's not associated with any small animals or microscopic elements, so she's a bit of both. Yeah, she's definitely a bit of both. She could be inspired by either Ant-Man or Atom. Robot's design is very reminiscent of DC's Robot Man from the Doom Patrol. With his position as the calm and philosophical robotic member of a superhero team, maybe you could argue there's some Vision and or Red Tornado peppered here and there. I'm sorry, even as a human, I don't really think it brings much originality or Marvelisms to balance out a near identical design and name from a DC character. The name is Rexplode, mon ami. Remember it. Yeah, a lovable rogue who's also a womanizer, who can supercharge stuff to make it go boom, Rexplode was always a big homage to Gambit from Marvel's X-Men. His heroic sacrifice actually happened before the X-Men revival, so Gambit's sacrifice might actually be inspired by Rex, funnily enough. Talk about going full circle. Obviously I totally didn't cry at both scenes. Why would you even think that? They were both so lucky. Damien Darklord's trenchcoat might bring to mind Constantine, but with him being a not exactly talkative vigilante that investigates mysterious superhero murders like Rorschach, on top of being a big red devil like Hellboy, with neither of these two originally being from Marvel or DC, I'm gonna pull a Cecil and send Damien straight towards the deepest depths, in this case, other companies. Speaking of Cecil, however, as the leader of a world-defending organization that looks after superheroes, with paranoia, skepticism and morally questionable actions being key components of his character, Nick Fury comes to mind as a possible inspiration. With his decision to employ his former villains, you might argue that some Amanda Waller's peppered here and there too. Dito goes for his face resembling the famous disfigured gunman Jonah Hex from DC. A tricky one, but I personally think his Marvel-isms and DC-isms kinda balance each other out. Do I though? Maybe he's more Nick Fury than Amanda Waller? I mean, if Invincible was a Marvel show and I replaced Cecil with Nick Fury, would I notice any difference? Would he do anything Nick Fury wouldn't? Well, I guess he checks out. I don't know. He's definitely not mostly DC for once. I mean, his design is definitely Jonah Hex inspired, that's a big component, you know, the entire face. And I did the same reasoning for Darkwing, so yeah, bit of both will do. Next up we have the good old buddy of Mark Grayson, Alan the Alien. As an orange alien coming from a nearly extinct species who was granted powers via artificial means and is good buddies with the main hero, that would be highly reminiscent of Beta Ray Bill, but given his whole thing centered around getting stronger each time he nearly dies, and his animosity against the Kryptonian stand-ins, I am tempted to call him the good twin of Doomsday. So into the bit of both you go, bro, with your bro right beside you. Here we go. Saving the best for last, for this category at least, we have Atom Eve. Now, her costume and energy constructs are highly reminiscent of the Star Sapphires, who are basically love-crazy Pink Lantern yandere, although her mindset is thankfully much more stable. Her association with the atom and power over matter itself is highly reminiscent of DC's Firestorm, and a flying redhead who falls in love with a black and blue Grayson. There's definitely some Starfire going on. As you may have noticed, 3 of those 3 characters I mentioned are all from DC Comics. However, since she takes after so many at once, the waters are more diluted than if she were to take after 2 instead. Since she doesn't physically resemble one more than the others, making for a very diluted mix, I mean, I wouldn't say she resembles Starfire any more or less than she resembles Firestorm or Star Sapphire. I actually wanna say she's mostly original, yeah? Because much like her powers, it's one thing if she uses existing elements, it's another if they're combined in a way never seen before. Before we get into the villains, let's get the civilians out of the way, like a good superhero would. Alrighty, I have no idea why this tier list had so many civilians in there, maybe because they thought that these were gonna be too little, but let's be honest, who watches Invincible for this guy? Who are you? Starting with some of the very first characters we see on the show, we have the Mauler twins. Between their bald and blue complexion, being much more intelligent than you think, even strangely chill and reasonable sometimes, and the fun banter between who's the clone and who's the original, I can't really think of any pre-existing character they remind me of. The closest that may come to mind is an obscure DC villain, the Ultra Humanite. This fella was basically a Superman's arch enemy before Lex Luthor took the bold anti-Superman mad scientist position, but what made Ultra Humanite stick out from the rest was his habit to hop between bodies, settling for his favorite body to return to, a giant white gorilla, because why not? Making him as strong as he was smart. I found this connection on TV tropes, but to be honest, I think that's a stretch, and it's safe to say they're mostly original, honestly. Next up, we have the when in doubt roaming in space guy, aka the first and last victory mortal ever gets the entire show. An old, bald, white dude in green with a wingsuit and a cackling laugh. I mean, you might as well put a Michael Keaton impression while you're at it. Next up, we have Sinclair, whose reanimate robots play a huge role in Season 3, but whose creator never talks once after Season 1. Mayhaps be related to being voiced by Ezra Miller. Both Marvel and DC house many robot-creating mad scientists, but Sinclair is specifically more akin to Herbert West from the Reanimator movie. Gigantic ego, lack of ethics, meddling with life and death like he was playing God, you know, Victor Frankenstein and such. It's an archetype you see very often, but it's not specific to either Marvel or DC. Doc Seismic is a goofy and seemingly harmless villain who can actually be threatening if the situation calls for it. Since that description befits many fellas from both Marvel or DC, and he lacks a particular gimmick besides being surprisingly woke, I was gonna put him in the same bit of both or mostly original category, but then I realized, wait, Doc Seismic, like the earthquake, Earth, underground, he's bald, short and ugly? That's Mole Man, from the Fantastic Four, very obviously so. Man, Rex, you don't have good company right now. From the depths to the underground to the city streets, we have Titan. I see many calling him a shadier Luke Cage, being a nigh indestructible, super strong black man with a no-nonsense attitude, and yeah, I can see it. The DC part of me, however, can't help but send some dead shots quickly and there, specifically being a criminal, generally loves his daughter and such, and Cyborg too, mostly due to the grey hoodie, semi-robotic appearance and literally being called Titan. I think the latter two balance out the Marvelisms of his Luke Caginess. Keeping it in the streets, we have Machine Head, who's an absolute riot of a character. I can imagine the voice actor thinks the same. I still have "I know where your family lives" stuck in my brain. And now you do too. This crime lord dons a white suit with a unique headgear that also works as his namesake, gets pretty hammy in his outburst, and shit, it's totally Black Mask from DC, isn't he? At least Machine Head is a full-on cyborg though, not as cool as being Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he'll take what we can get. Mostly DC. Yay. The Lizard League is blatantly the Serpent Society. Like, they barely tried to hide it. The same goofy reptile costumes, the silly reputation, the double alliterative team name. Come on guys, come on. They were even gonna be the main villains of Captain America 3 at one point. The same episode where Machine Head debuted also introduced us to Battle Beast, cosmic warrior in search of a worthy opponent. Machine Head having Battle Beast on his payroll is more or less the same of Kingpin dialing Thanos for dealing with Spider-Man. Despite that fun analogy, however, Battle Beast actually takes after a 1980s storyline of the same name, focused around, you guessed it, weapons-wielding humanoid animals in body armor, also led by a White Lion, funnily enough. Tether Tyrant, I think that's his name. Look, it's a small villain with a big appendage that can grab things. Look, this club needs some members, okay, it's a bit empty otherwise. Isotope, he can teleport, and many Marvel DC can do that, so I think he can go right along with Shrinking Ray. Not as a ship, mind you, I'm just saying for the same reasons. He's there for the same reasons she is. Kursk, it's very blatantly Electro. Like the Electro if he one day decided to hate green and was Russian for some reason. Multipole is very interesting because with Duplicate, I put her there because she's basically Triplicate Girl. But it's not like Triplicate Girl as an evil twin with the same power that I know of. And I know that splicing is not unique to either Marvel or DC, but come on, he's mostly original, I wanna say that, yeah. Oh, and I completely forgot, sometimes in the background we see this Saitama wannabe, so whatever, sure, here you go bro. The elephant guy that Oliver curb stomped a few episodes ago is a dead winger for Rhino. They're both big, grey, inspired by pachyderms, which is the term for rhinos, elephants and hippos. You're welcome. The Hail Mary, the beast that almost killed Omni Man, is a dead ringer for Cthulhu, of the Cthulhu mythos, down to the tentacle and green coloration. As far as we know, she doesn't drive anyone crazy, however. Besides Entire and Joyous, I guess. Anissa, I think that's her name, a short-haired brunette, super strong member of a militaristic army of Superman. She really reminds me of Feora or Ursa, which are honestly both interchangeable characters at times, also called Zod Tiger in many iterations. Powerplex is very unique, because at first you might say, oh, he's Electro, kinda like Kurskis. But to tell you the truth, the whole thing about gaining power based on kinetic energy, turning it into electricity, how that perfectly ties into the themes of trauma and such, I honestly think it is mostly original. Yeah, he shines on his own light, his own very traumatized, he can keep getting away with this light. A big, evil green alien has been in both Marvel or DC, and he doesn't have any shape-shifting for me to parallel him to the Skrulls, and he doesn't have any shape-shifting for me to parallel him to the DC Martians either, so he's just green alien from another dimension. Oh, wait, that's kinda like the Impossible Man. No, I'm sorry, okay. This guy is straight up NRG from Ben 10. Yeah, it's not really a point of comparison. The Sequids are parasitic, starfish-like aliens that want to possess people and make them part of their hive minds. That's Terror the Conqueror. A more accurate version than James Gunn, mind you. Mr. Lee backstory of being a soul imprisoned in a dragon and can now possess the dragon, but the body is vulnerable in the meantime. I can't really pinpoint to any specific thing. So yeah. Finally we have the Viltrumites and Angstorm Levy. This girl, I don't really think Kryptonians have a equivalent for this lady right here. She can be mostly original. Dreg. Well, since he's the leader that Anissa obeys to, maybe General Zod, I guess? Conquest, whom from my perspective just arrived, and probably future me already saw the episode where he debuted by now, and I'm probably gonna write something on screen to express how I feel about him right now. I probably agree. Future version of me, I probably agree. Let's see, he's from the very little I've seen of him so far, he's a big brute with messed up teeth, wears a glove but it's not an infinity gauntlet, it's more so a cybernetic replacement apparently. Maybe he has a mustache, he's super strong, maybe I can stretch it to him resembling Red Hulk kinda, General Ross, you know. For now it's gonna be mostly original, yeah, I have to see more to properly judge. And finally we have Angstorm Levy, the archenemy for Mark right on in the story. Being a mastermind who antagonizes a physically stronger hero with his big ol' forehead and brain in general, sounds a lot like the leader, Hulk's archenemy, and Captain America sometimes apparently. He blames Invincible for a frankly self-inflicted disfigurement, and he dons a pretty nice cape, which reminds me of Doctor Doom. And I've seen some people pair him with the Spot from Into the Spider-Verse, but Angstorm Levy technically came much earlier than the Spider-Verse iteration of Spot you probably associate him with. Yeah, I think he's mostly Marvel, I can safely say that. And there you have it, my ranking list for whether I think Invincible characters are more inspired by Marvel or DC. I can safely say that Robert Kirkman, that's his name right, is definitely more into the DC side of things. And he very interestingly decided to give the characters with more screen time a balance from Marvel and DC, give minor villains and Rex and Angstorm Levy and Samson a Marvel inspiration, and give a mostly DC inspiration for characters that appear relatively little in the grand scheme of things, and sometimes it wilds out with making characters from other companies entirely. Below we have civilians, and below we have a piece of shit of a human being who deserves no mention whatsoever. That's it guys, thank you for watching, do let me know if you want more ranking like this, it means a lot to me if you liked and subscribe to support, you know. I'm gonna drink some water, you do the same. Oko Krypton, hope in a made your day,